today our theme is we are going to unpack the big headlines. We're going to focus on how that affects all of us right here at home. I have an incredible panel of thought leaders here. We just enjoyed some delicious food courtesy of our friends from Gandolfo's, and a great big shout out to our sponsor, Grand Peaks Prime Meats. If you haven't checked them out yet, I encourage you to do that. I'm a big fan of their seasoned steak bites. Really, really simple. They're the sous vide, so they're pre-cooked, a few minutes on the grill, and they're good to go. I like to have them on hand in the fridge, and they are perfect for topping a salad. They work great for stir fries, but they have all kinds of grilling options. They have crock pot meals, so check them out at gpprimemeats.com. Amy and Bob are absolutely incredible, so helpful there. So today there's a lot going on, as you know. We're kind of in a transitional phase, I think, here in this country, and history is about to be made today. And so we're going to tackle some of those really big issues. But before we do that, I want to give each of our panel an opportunity to introduce themselves, and we'll start right here with Bill.
My name is Bill Ayzin, and I'm one of the owners of the Wealth of Health Natural Market in Idaho Falls. Small business, 53 years, family business, which is not easy, as many people know. And I think I'm probably pretty well qualified to solve all your world's issues, Joey, because I was born in the Soviet Union, so I can talk about legal and illegal immigration, communism, dictatorships. I did 10 years in the US Navy, so I can talk about the state of the military right now. I worked at the site for 10 years. I have an engineering degree, so I can talk nuclear. I can talk about wasted EVs, and I don't, obviously, I'm not as worried about things as other people. I say what's on my mind. And COVID, definitely, we took a position, and thank God that we did the position that we took. Common sense prevailed. So yeah, I think I can answer a lot of questions.
And 53 years, congratulations.
Not me, but family. Yeah.
What a milestone for a family business to pass that on from generation to generation.
We obviously haven't chased all our customers away yet.
All right, Julie.
Thank you. I am Senator Julie Vanorden from District 30, which is Bingham and Butte counties. I guess my shout out today would be 2 days ago, we had a blessing of the first Safe Haven baby box in the state of Idaho, and it was in Blackfoot at the Grove City Medical Center. And it was attended by a lot of people, and it's just a special thing to have. You hope that it doesn't get used, but the fact that it's there, and if it needs to be used, I'm so glad it's there. So it's for moms, and dads even, that maybe find themselves in a position where they might need to surrender their child, and they want to do it anonymously, so have a little privacy in that, so that's available for them.
And I know, Senator, you have worked very hard on all of that, and I had a chance to interview the CEO of the Safe Haven baby boxes, and she shared some incredible stories of things that have happened throughout the country. So really positive stuff there. And Travis.
Yeah, Travis Snowder, President and CEO of Qaltek. Qaltek is an instrumentation consulting company. We work in a lot of different industries. About 3,500 clients across pretty much all states, including internationally as well. So we're heavily involved in government contracting, government programs, national defense, homeland security. So a lot of the issues that we're dealing with today in our country and locally, we get to see both sides of the story quite often, as well as be involved in a lot of what's happening to try to better it in the community and nationally. And then because of that, I actually have a group that we've formed called Heroes Defense. locally here. It's been quite a success. We started just to kind of remember 9/11 because it was bothering me that we weren't. And because we do one of our largest clients with Qaltek is New York City Fire Department. We managed all their equipment for 17 years now. So got to know those guys. It bothered me a little bit, and so we thought, let's try to do something here locally, bring that message here, and it blew up. You know, we have a great community and the right mindset mostly in our community, and so it just really grew quite a bit. And so, you know, that group this year, we're getting ready to do bringing tunnels and towers this year. We're building 2 9/11 memorials here in town, and bring a lot of education around the right mindset for our community here locally. So, and because of the two, we get pulled into political conversations locally and nationally. So I don't know if I'm as good as you as answering questions, but I answer them nonetheless. And, you know, unfortunately, I have the same condition is that I say what I believe, and I think in our world today, that's something that needs to be valued more than most things.
It sure does, and I had a chance to attend that 9/11 banquet last year. It was incredible, and what a successful fundraiser too.
Yeah, I think in our community, it's one of the most. I think we raised about $350,000. So we went in about 4 hours. So it was a pretty successful event, and this year it's looking to do even more.
Right. And Representative Ehardt, Barb.
Yes, Representative Barbara Ehardt, right here, District 33 in the heart of Idaho Falls. I am grateful to be here. And also I do work at Club Apple, the largest athletic club in the state. Well, maybe not the largest, but the most prestigious athletic club in the state. Let me just say I've been on a month-long tour through the month of June with many of my colleagues on Take Back Title IX. And I was there with Riley Gaines, Paula Scanlon, Martina Navratilova joined us, Tulsi Gabbard. It was quite an event as we've been pushing back on the absolute illegal rewriting of Title IX by this administration, where they took 37 words, really dealt with opportunities for girls and women, both in education and sports, and have rewritten it to 1,500 words, or rather 1,500 pages of essentially punishment to any of us who don't adhere to all of basically the laws that we have passed. We're going to be asked to go against. So anyway, that's what I've been doing for the last month. So happy to be here with these guys. Let me just give a shout out to Bill. I'll tell you what, words of wisdom from this gentleman. I've had the opportunity to meet, having speak at a couple events, and if we don't pay attention, we're going to find ourselves in that very situation. We're already headed that way. So you have a good man here in Bill.
Yes, he's going to be able to bring some really important perspective. And Barb, you've done so much good work along that line, and I know you have done a lot of traveling and advocating, so congrats on your good work there. And John?
I'm John Radford. I serve on the Idaho Falls City Council. This is my 3rd term. Barb and I used to serve together. And
favorite council person.
Yeah, we love Barb and it's grateful for all of her service. But I am also a local CEO of a social service agency here, and I also teach adjunct political science at one of the local universities. I've just been involved in community and lifting community and trying to find ways to make our community accepting and that place that you were talking about that does love our nation and care about each other and take care of each other. So I have a unique perspective because I come to this work through my spouse has a chronic illness, and so that's a looming thing in our lives of trying to have empathy and have the people the help that you need to kind of get through that as well. So that's me in a nutshell.
And thank you so much, John, for all the good work you do here in our community. And you're absolutely right. Empathy is something that can go a long way in creating more unity in our community. And Kirk, thank you so much for being here, traveling from Pocatello.
Well, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. Kirk Lepchenske, I'm the membership manager for the Pocatello Chubbuck Chamber of Commerce. I also serve on the board of directors for the Portland Greenway Foundation, Portland Valley Partners, and I am a commissioner on the Pocatello Development Authority. So obviously my passion is healthy, strong, positive growth for southeast and eastern Idaho, creating a good quality of life for people to come here and are coming here. So.
Right, for those people who are coming, because the growth is happening, and so it's kind of managing that and.
Yeah, it's gonna happen whether you want it to or not, so we really need to be in front of it.
Right.
To make sure it's the type of growth that we want, and then it's healthy for our communities.
Right, it's facing it and kind of defining it rather than allowing that to define us.
Trying to find it later, yep. Yes,
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, thank you all for being here. As you can see, we have a very incredible panel of thought leaders. And I want to jump right to the fact that in just a little bit, President Joe Biden is going to face the media. And if you really think about it, it's kind of strike three. We had the disastrous debate, strike one. Then that sit-down interview with George Stephanopoulos that was meant to do damage control and unfortunately failed. And now here we are, he's going to be facing the music. And if we think about just the energy that we've seen from the media towards Kareem Jean-Pierre, I think we get a real sense of what might be in store for President Biden. So I want to throw this out. If you had an opportunity to look President Biden in the eye and ask him one question, what would that be? Let's start right here with you, Bill.
Why he's in it.
I love that.
You know, it's very simple. They're power hungry. The whole family, regardless of the politics, when it's time to step down, you need to step down. And they've tried everything to throw up against the opposite side, but it's what they're doing is basically backfiring, and we can all see it. I think people are not stupid. It's not convincing somebody, it's not telling him, but look, people can see it with their own eyes. It's been happening for a long time.
You are right on the money with why. I mean, why kind of sums it up. And you know, there's this headline that really kind of complements what you were saying, Bill, and it's David Webb on Fox saying, Biden's dysfunctional family is willing to sacrifice him on the altar of power. And we have a lot of focus on President Biden, but if you really look at it, I think this is a moment in time that suggests that power is intoxicating, and that once people have it, they really don't want to let that go. So Julie, let's head out to you.
I would ask him, are you thinking about the nation?
Very good.
Because I think that, to me, when I see all of this, it frightens me to think what other countries are thinking about us, you know? And here, this is a vulnerability. It shows a real vulnerable part of our nation. And what does that say?
Yeah, our vulnerability has really been exposed, and as it's been exposed, that certainly does pose a national security threat. Because the fact of the matter is, we know that there are a lot of folks who don't like us in the good old United States of America. We have enemies, and as they watch that, as they see that cognitive decline, it certainly does expose some real vulnerability. So thank you. And Travis, how about you? If you had that chance to throw a question to President Biden.
Well, I'll be perfectly transparent. The question would be why, if you made the assumption, and I think we by nature make the assumption that he's actually in charge. And I think that we've seen that that's not the case. My question would be who?
Who?
And so, you know, who's actually got his family or him in a position where they're trading power or money or you know, vulnerability. And I don't think, you know, I think he is the pinnacle of this, but I think we've gotten to the point in our government where we've allowed this to transcend to such a point where you have a network of people who risk so much if Trump were to get back in.
Right.
And so at that point you're facing bad or badder. And they're willing at any level to lie, cheat, steal, whatever, to prevent that from happening. And If the people that are not okay with that are going to fight you anyway, then you start to support the people who may not be knowledgeable, or maybe more influential, or maybe more manipulable. And that's what we have. Who's leading our country is those people who are able to be more manipulated, or able to be more leveraged. And so that would be my question: is who's actually driving this ship, and why? And I think to your point, a fair question, but we already know they don't care about our country. And the why, well, I think we probably have good speculation that it's money and leverage.
And
so,
power. Right.
It's a very uncomfortable conversation to have, and you get thrown automatically in the bus of conspiracy theorists, but I think our country as a whole this debate was a very, very eye-opening experience. And in a normal scenario, you would see somebody that would be more open to doing what's right for the party, or doing right for the country. And we've seen Kenyan more of an action versus words guy. His actions do not speak to either anything but being in a leveraged position where he is having to do what is being told of him to do.
Right. The who is so powerful. In fact, yesterday I said on the show, I kind of referenced The Wizard of Oz. We all know that things aren't exactly what they appear to be in that movie. And when the curtain is pulled back, we see something different. So I said, it's time to pull the curtain back. Who is running this country? Because it's clear that President Biden has not been running this country for quite a while. So a really good piece of wisdom to add to this conversation. And Barb, how about you?
Biden never ran the country. He didn't run the country when he was elected. He's not running the country now, and he's not going to run the country in a day, 2 days, or a year from now. He's not in charge. I won't reinvent the question. My question was very similar. I want to know who has what on him. And it's not just him. It's whoever the powers that be, whether it's Obama's, whatever. I'm also a little disagreement. I don't see my choice for president as bad or worse. I see it as something absolutely terrible for the country and something great for the country, and make America great again. I am a Trump fan. I am unabashedly a Trump fan, and it doesn't bother me to say it, because one man loves this country, one man hates this country. How do we know? By the actions of where our country is today versus 3.5 years ago. I don't believe you could have done more in the course of 3.5 years for the deconstruction of our Constitution and the deconstruction of the family than what has just happened over the course of these last 4 years. You look at the inflation, you look at the gas prices, you can look at any metric you want, and I 100% believe that this has been done on purpose. Our country is faltering. We have allowed people into this country that not only expect us to take care of them with whatever promises have been given, but they are also here to destroy it. And the latest reports on those who are coming across the border should be sickening and frightful to every American that there is. They don't love this country. The people in charge, Mayorkas, all of it, they should be held for treason. The original intent of treason has to do with exactly what has happened. And I know I probably share it a little bit different than you guys, but we said we're gonna speak our minds, we're gonna be straight shooters. I'm telling you right now, I love this country, and this is not, anything that's happening right now was not the intent of our founding fathers. I'm an originalist, I believe in the Constitution, and don't people go off, well, the Constitution, no, whatever. We're not talking about some of the things that have changed. We're talking about the intent of the greatness of this country, how to provide the most freedom for all of us and all the people who legally found themselves here. So
I just want to add one point of clarity, not bad or bad. What I meant by that is they have two choices, in either stick with Biden, who's going to manipulate and use them, or support Trump, who is at some point going to expose what they've been doing and tear down that, and their consequences are bad or worse.
Oh, I appreciate that, because some people will say it, the other way. Obviously, it's like this or that.
No,
I see President Trump.
I'm a Trump, personality-wise, we need that personality, good, bad, or the ugly, but you look at his policies, you look at actions for this country, forget person, there's many presidents, I've actually had this conversation, I sidetracked the conversation, but it's funny because there's a distinction between personal morality or whatever and actual love for the country, right? And you look at our presidents in the past and look that we never elected people because they been more character.
No.
Never have, and we never will.
And I would joke about John F. Kennedy today, in spite of all his infidelity.
Correct, right?
Because
And
he
yet,
loved the
what he
country.
did for the country,
Yeah.
and what he fought for,
Yeah.
and the choices that he made, and the actions that he took, despite the headwinds that were gonna come with that.
Yeah.
So, I'm also a very big Trump fan. His policies were exactly what this country needed. It was amazing. And I think in my lifetime, the first time I've seen a president who would actually, forgive my brashness, have the balls to actually say to hell to high water, we're gonna do this and we're gonna get this done because this is what the country needed. And the impact that had so quickly was amazing. So I'm also a huge Trump. I just wanna make sure I clarify, I think the difference with them is we have so many people in power right now that are faced with, frankly, what could be jail time, right, if they're exposed. And the alternative is follow this reckless leader that's being led by whoever, and maybe there's a way out that path, for them.
And I think, Representative, you bring up something that's really important, and that is patriotism.
Yeah.
And no matter where you stand politically, I think we can all agree that increasing patriotism in this country is going to go a long way in getting us on the right path.
100%, it's not a Democrat or Republican thing, it's
No.
an American thing.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think we have to remember, we are all on the same team.
Yep.
John, how about you? What would your question be?
Barb knows, I would have a different question. I'm a known Democrat and has ran as a Democrat. And it's interesting to sit here and kind of listen because I would say the exact opposite of what you guys have said. Donald Trump's the one who stood at the cemetery for our fallen soldiers and said, I don't get it. Why do these suckers do this? He went and said John McCain was a war hero that was in prison for how many years in Vietnam, and he said, sucker. To me, Joe Biden has a son who died because of the burn pits in Afghanistan. Like, Joe Biden loves his country. He gave up his son for that. So it's an interesting component of what we're living in two different countries here that believe, because everything you said about control, I would say Putin has Trump under his thumb. That's what we all think. We're scared to death.
But there's no evidence of that.
You're propagating the news that was propagated by
And what's the evidence of you thinking this about Joe Biden, that he hates
His policies,
So when you think
or
about
failure of them.
So it's a random thing to think that we can sit here and know what Donald Trump is like as a person versus, because one thing I would tell Joe Biden to do, get a 24-hour film crew, have him around. I remember I voted for Mitt Romney, and he got beat. And right after that, Netflix did a great, someone had done a full-on documentary about his life during the campaign. And everyone said, why didn't that guy show up? He would have won if people could have seen the humanness.
You know who it was doctored?
Well, it was after the
I bet on
election.
TV, I guarantee it was doctored.
It was after the election, and it showed him with his family and his loved ones, and it just gave a better, because we see these people in this way. And it's a struggle for me to kind of hear us talk about, patriotism and love of our country, and think that there's people who just say, oh, that party hates the country and that party loves this country.
Well, let me ask you a couple of things just to point to that note, right? So, just yesterday, right, there's a bill that's passed to require driver's licenses to be part of the voting process.
Proof of citizenship in
citizenship,
federal
right.
elections.
Say
And
that.
198 Democrats voted against that. Why?
You'd have to ask them, but I'll tell you that there's a long
There's
history.
30 examples of that same scenario.
So there's a long history in this country for immigrants to have a buy-in into this country. Boston, New York City allowed immigrants to vote when your Italian parents or grandparents came here and wanted a voice to improve their community.
But
And I'm not,
the American
illegal
law is
aliens
not
should,
required.
They
That's not-
came legally.
Yeah,
illegal aliens should not be able to vote.
Right.
There's no question.
and if you
So-
come here through any of those programs that are set up for that, you are given tools to be able to get through that voting process and participate.
And I can talk to that, I can
Right.
tell you the history and how you're supposed to get through,
Right.
and how we did do it in 1979, and how it's happening right now. So,
Yeah.
And people don't, like, the whole border conversation is incredibly interesting, and we can talk through that, but the people I know that enter this country come through their airport. Because they get a ticket,
Sure.
they fly in,
Yeah.
and then they overstay a visa because they're a student.
They
or
get a
they're-
visa.
they're-
But at
And
least at
that's
that
not-
point, they're getting a visa, right? So in a visa, there's still some security screening, right?
But
There's
you
still
don't know
some
who they
vetting that's
are.
happening.
But those aren't the ones we're talking about,
No.
guys.
Yeah.
I mean, those aren't the ones we're
Right.
talking about.
conflating, there's so much
Yeah.
conflation
And-
between
But that's another
immigrants.
problem I
Legals
have
and
right now,
illegals.
is the immigration bill that was worked on for 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
day and night. They didn't take Christmas off, and it was a bipartisan approach in the Senate. And then Donald Trump said, hey, we're running on this position, so you better not pass that bill.
That's not
And-
what happened, John. That's not.
That's what
not-
that's what the
being
media
truthful.
said, but that's,
That
They didn't
that
even
bill
bring it up.
from the very first, the Congress, they already passed one. They sent it over there and they would take it up. That would have stopped the border crossings immediately. The one that, what was it Langford who worked on it, who was the silly Republican that worked on it, and then he found out that what they had added to it, he didn't even vote. The people in the Senate
the
didn't
pork
even
that was
vote
added to
voting
that
for
were
it.
not worth
Yeah.
the trade-off.
That where they were still going to allow almost the exact same amount of people crossing the border. That's not stopping the problem. We want the problem stopped. We have so many people. We can't even. Do you know what who's the mayor right now of New York?
Adams.
Adams is now looking to revoke their being a sanctuary city
Yep.
because they're seeing the error of their way. In theory, it was all nice. So virtue
Sounds
signaling
pretty when
until
it doesn't affect
yeah,
you.
when it doesn't affect you, as soon as it starts affecting you with all of these illegal immigrants and all of the crime they bring, and taking away the resources. You know how many of our minority brothers and sisters are over there saying we want them gone because now they're no longer receiving the resources. It's all going to these illegal aliens.
But that's the disconnect that I find, is that I feel like the Democrats were ready to finally jump in and say, yes, let's have a solid, secure border, because they have seen some of the problems.
If you read the bill, which I did, because it was published, because Trump told the Democratic Party, he said, you know what, this is what the media is saying about me, you need to publish that legislation. So it did, it went on a bunch of different channels. The trade-offs, so on the front end, the media said, yeah, you're gonna get all these controls and additional people,
Sure.
and which by the way, the personnel resources are not the problem. That's not the problem. It's the support those personnel resources get. So you have plenty of Border Patrol right now stand by there going, I can't stop you.
Yep.
If I stop you, I get questioned or I get my own trouble and place in trouble. So it's leadership that is coming all the way from the top down. It's not resources. So the bill was trying to solve the problem with resources, which everybody on the ground knew wasn't the problem. But behind the scenes, they took away a whole bunch of other rights, which strengthened and would have weakened all those resources they were giving. So it was a complete sleight of hand.
Misdirection, complete misdirection. Why not
But
just
the
take up
media-
Congress's bill?
But the media came out and said Trump told them to cut the bill. And I will tell you this about Trump too, and I know I've got a lot of friends that are Democrats too, and I think, the same thing on our side, right? We hear and see what we believe we hear and see. And unfortunately, we were raised in a community, in an area, I'd say in a phase of our world where media manipulation was not something we grew up with. Not to the extent it is now.
Or we knew about it. Yeah.
It's always happened, right? But,
Walter Cronkite was pretty, no, I'm kidding.
Made no mistake.
But there has always been personal bias in media, sure, but the targeting of the information, the manipulation of the information is only in the last decade or so that has become literally so targeted for political agenda. So I would tell you this, just the things you said about the Tomb of the Soldier, right, with Trump on there, I would tell you, go back up, Google the whole video from those, and see how much was taken out of context. The January 6th stuff, if you watched in the January 6th trial, there's all this stuff on the news where he said this, and he said that, and he said this. And during the trial, the media had to expose, and did expose, as did the Democratic Party, that all of those lines that were put all over the newspaper and that were quoted in the newspapers, they were all pulled out of context from other portions of the speech. And if I was a Democrat, I'd be like, I believe that, because my party wouldn't tell me otherwise. But
Go back to the West Virginia and the Snopes admitting, is just 2 weeks ago, where Trump said there are good people on both sides. Trump never said that in that context, but the Democrats continue repeating it. But so with Snopes, which is a liberal check factor, whatever.
I watched that.
Came
statement
out.
live. He
Yeah.
said that.
Really?
Yeah.
So Snopes just came out and says it was all false.
Even Snopes just
Even
came out.
Snopes just came
They-
out.
And
they-
Snopes was played
Yeah.
favored by the whole
Yeah.
Gates thing, so
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
to get them to admit it.
Right.
But regardless, I just think it's just this thought process that we have to find a way to find out how we can talk about the other sides with some realistic, like, to me, it's been a ridiculous question to question Joe Biden getting out of the race when Donald Trump wasn't seen in public for 13 days, the last 13 days. And then his comments about like passing the largest tax cut in American history, and Reagan's was 10 times GDP versus his was 1% of GDP. He's just not all with it anymore. He's 3 years younger than Biden.
You mean like Biden saying that he was the one that did $35 insulin when Trump did it 3 years before, he rejected it and then reinstalled
Except
it?
for it was in the bistructure infrastructure.
His
Bipartisan
uncle was
infrastructure
eaten
law.
by cannibals.
You guys, listen, the debate exposed Biden to everybody but Republicans, because we already knew, I mean, the last 3 years, 3.5 years, we knew there was huge cognitive decline, and it's been shameful to think that we propped him up as our leader, so now,
We did.
I know, but now to hear the other side act like, oh my gosh, what's happening, everybody, even George Clooney's calling for a walk back, I'm like, oh, flip, you guys just had you just had a fundraiser with him.
Yeah.
Who told you to come out and say that? It's so controlled, it's not even
I
funny.
think there's one point,
No.
a very point, and that's why I brought up the voting rights and the proof of citizenship. You know, we live in a country where we must accept. We have two primary principles, in my opinion. One, we have to have secure elections. And every party, every member, every senator, every council person, every politician, all the way up, should be 100% focused on making sure that the people's voice is heard.
That's
But
right.
there's
That's-
a problem.
Yeah.
Like, point to a time in history. I mean, Lyndon Johnson.
3 days ago, when they voted against proof of citizenship in their
198
elections.
Democrats.
That alone says that we're not working
How
towards it.
many immigrants were voting in elections? What was the problem?
Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, I'll also place a bet on this right now, I'll this bet out right now. There are approximately 14 million people that came into the southern border.
There's up to 20 million illegal aliens in America, they say.
Right, but through the last few years, there's roughly 14
Not a
million.
conservative estimate.
A conservative estimate, roughly 14 million.
And how
Do you
many-
know what those people are given when they come into the border and they're held before they're released? 3 pieces of paper. 1, something about America. 2, their rights and so forth. And 3, a Democratic voting registration card. That's true.
And
Why?
I know we need to
Why
get to
would
you.
they?
I
I'm
know.
enjoying
You
this.
said
Wait,
you
wait.
started
Oh, sorry.
it. This is all your fault.
It's all my fault, okay.
You dumped the truck and
All right,
Yeah, I know,
because
sorry.
I
Sorry, I
wanna read-
hijacked, I'm
wait,
sorry,
wait,
I was
I wanna
sorry.
read this, Elon Musk has a lot of wisdom, and when we talk about,
And he's on the
election has to
inside,
be,
yeah.
free, this is what he said, Elon Musk said, when combined with mail-in ballots, the system is designed to make it impossible to prove fraud. So think about that, when combined with mail-in ballots, the system is designed to make it impossible to prove fraud. Mail-in and drop box ballots should not be allowed, as cameras on the in-person voting station would at least prevent large-scale fraud by counting how many people showed up versus ballots cast. I mean, that's just simple
Well,
logic.
this is a simple math, but there's 166 million voters, registered voters in the US last election. It's dropped to 160 million in the last year. However, Texas, ironically, is adding 253,000 on average new registered voters per week. This is on the US Census. So that does not match their population growth. That's an insane number. Pennsylvania is adding between 13 and 36,000 new registered voters per week. So, big red flags, first of all, right? This is my prediction. Speaking to election integrity, you finish the first 2 thoughts. First one is we have to have every person in this country in a leadership position focused and unified on making sure our elections are valid. If that is true and Biden wins, God help us, but that's where our country's headed. And guess what? That's what it is. The second part of that is making sure that every person, the rules of who can vote in those are well established, right? So secure elections and the rules are well understood. So that way you get people that can actually believe in our elections, and then we have to accept it. Here's the problem, okay? You have 160 million people that voted, the registered voters right now. By this election, what's going to happen? We have 190 million people voting.
Definitely, an election
What's
integrity is going to
160
continue
million
being
plus
important.
14 million?
But that's telling me that you don't know our little local clerk here in Bonneville County, that you don't trust that she's gonna have integrity around our election system. The benefit of our country's election system is that every county runs this, and there's a local county official who's doing this. And we know her, she's a really nice lady, and
Sure.
she's really
And
positive.
how many
and tries-
people steal from their businesses that are really nice ladies?
Nice
Yeah.
people.
But do
You
you know
own
what
the
it takes
business,
to go
you
register
learn
to
not to
vote?
trust people at that level, I'm sorry.
I do trust our local county.
I'm not
election
saying
official.
Great
It's not
clarification.
about you.
Yeah, it's not about you, it's a grander
But
discussion.
to get 30 million more voters, you'd have to say people just like our county clerk would have to be lying and cheating
I mean, like the water line
participating.
breaking in.
But
a
how
voting
is a
booth that
county
members broke.
clerk necessarily, I mean, maybe they're
They're the
the
ones who
point.
decided that.
Yeah, but what does the county clerk have to do with those drop ballot boxes being
Nothing.
stuffed? They just gotta count them.
No, they don't. They have to verify that they have a signature, they have a card, they have to
They
come
don't.
from an address.
They didn't.
They
They
did.
4
did.
years ago.
They
They
did.
did.
So suddenly, when Trump lost, then elections couldn't be trusted, but in 1980, when Ronald Reagan,
We were okay in
didn't talk
Idaho,
about
but
this.
there were many states that were not
We
okay.
We
That's
didn't
an
have
old-
drop
that's an
ballot
old-
boxes.
He got beat by 80 million votes.
During the Trump's law, or during the previous election, there wasn't millions of votes that came in the middle of the night unverified and unvalidated.
How many
That's-
states
that's
got
where-
places got shut down?
There was 40 court cases with judges all across this country that looked at the very thing you're saying, and they said no, because they had to prove it in a court of law with evidence. And it
Or,
didn't
as we're
happen.
getting at here, and we're going down the conspiracy channel here, or how many of them are vulnerable? How many of those people
And
are
you
in
can't
there?
trust anything, and we're in the Gadianton robbers, and we're.
Oh,
That's the Book of Mormon.
Well, I think, John, to your point, I do believe that Biden in his own way does love this country. I think it comes down to this. People just have different ideas about what's best for the country, and I think that from where I'm sitting, as you look at the Biden family and what we know, they love power. And I think that's something that you can't really deny, but you're bringing up the point, John, that there's always more to every story than meets the eye, and I do think we have to continue having those conversations. And no matter what you think politically of Biden, I think it's heartbreaking that we have a man who has served our country for so long, given up a lot of his life, who is now the laughingstock on a world stage. And that says a lot about the love of power. And I think that's gonna be where we need to get to. We need leaders who are not so in love with power. And if we can find a way to get there, I think we're gonna see some progress. I wanna get right to Kirk because you've been so patient.
This is fantastic. I love it. I could just sit here and listen all day.
Yeah. So Kirk, yeah, what question would you throw out?
Well, one thing, I tend to lean conservative. Most of my friends are very liberal, so I do get to hear both sides. So I have come to the conclusion over my years, everyone wants what is best for the country. What we disagree on is how we're going to get there.
Exactly.
So my question to Joe Biden would be a very honest, can you explain to me your thought processes that you have gone through to establish your belief that you are the best leader for this country at this point in time? Or, as George Washington feared, are you putting party over patriotism? Are you staying in this just for your party and for your own power? Or do you honestly believe that you are the best leader for this great country?
That's a great question. And there was a really interesting headline yesterday, and it was party over country. And so I think that's where a lot of people are getting to. So thank you very much for bringing that in. I do think that kind of hits to what John's saying. Yeah, in their heart of hearts, I don't think people set out to say, I'm going to destroy this country. But fundamentally, it really does come down to very different ideas about how you arrive at what's best for this country. And that's why forums just like this are important, because we have to keep talking to each other. And when I hear people say, I'm throwing in the towel, I don't want to vote for either candidate, that is very disheartening, because it's such a privilege to be able to vote and to have your voice be heard in that important way. So I think we have to find ways to lean in with some curiosity and really look at ways to bridge the gap so that we can get to a place where we're gonna be on the right track. I talked to Fox News Radio's Ryan Schmelz yesterday. I had a conversation with him, and he believes that something is going to be happening very soon. There's a lot of buzz about that right now, that today this press conference could be the beginning of the end. So let's just go there. Let's just throw it out. If Biden steps aside, what does that look like in your mind? Who do they put forward?
Well, on the Democratic side, it has to be someone new and fresh and interesting, because that seems to be the formula to win the presidency now. Obama came from nowhere and then won because he didn't, because he wasn't Hillary Clinton. Hillary probably never had a chance to win because for 30 years she was defined as the enemy, right? And there was so much hatred around her. And I think but here, Biden doesn't want to leave because he's the only known person to have beaten Donald Trump, right? He beat him by 8 million votes in the popular vote. And it was a close election in the electoral college, but I think in his heart of hearts, that's what he thinks.
He thinks he can beat him.
He's the only one, right? And because Kamala Harris doesn't poll well against Donald Trump.
No.
But I think a Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland, someone just that is doing interesting things for people, the actual people on the ground. You would need a governor to emerge. It can't really be a senator. And it would have to not be Kamala Harris. I just don't think anyone has any thought process that anything's different there. I think the Republicans are in trouble if there is a change. I think when you have two of the most unpopular people ever in polling. So Hillary and Donald was the least popular ever election, and 2 people being polled, least likable. And now Biden and Trump beat that number.
Yeah.
So whoever makes the change probably is going to win this presidency. That's what I think in terms of.
Well, and the clock is ticking because we're getting to the point where that convention is happening next month, so we don't have a lot of time as far as that goes. Anybody else have anything they want to throw out?
I hope Biden stays in, because but having said that, he won't. There's also, won't get into it, conspiracy prophecy on that. You're going to have a hard time removing Kamala from the White House.
I think so.
You have an entitled person picked specifically not for her talent, but for her race. I mean, this is what DEI has done to us. It's terrible.
Yep.
And so, in order to replace her, I think the Democrats who are the father figure of DEI, how do they explain putting another white male in place of that office if they take Kamala out? So I think they back themselves into a corner. And not that I disagree as far as who could be the leader with John. I don't I'm talking about what the Democrats have done to themselves with their own policies, and what you're going to remove Kamala now. They're going to have a hard time doing that. I have one other thing to say, and that is, you had mentioned that something about those who desire power, the ones who shouldn't be in. One thing I do have to say is it's one of the reasons why I'm such a supporter in our city council of John. Here's somebody who's pretty gosh darn humble. He doesn't seek power. He listens to all sides. He even listens to me. And I do appreciate him for that. I just vastly disagree with a lot of that.
But you know what? That's great, because it showcases the fact that it's okay to disagree. Other people's opinions are not contagious. You're not forced to co-sign on what somebody else feels or believes. You can still listen. Kirk, do you have something else you wanted to throw out there?
I have to be really careful with my position. I kind of have to walk the line. But I don't know, what my concern is, if Joe Biden decides to get out of the race now, you guys probably know a whole lot better than I do. What are the legalities of that? I mean, how do they?
In '68, Herbert Humphrey took over, and then they got killed, they got slaughtered.
Yeah, and I'm aware of it. What is the legal process like?
Well, at the convention, they can, the voters there can make that decision.
Okay.
So that's really the
As long as
process.
it happens before that.
It's all okay.
I personally think this has been the plan all along. It's funny. I actually have a friend that 3 years ago told me that before the Democratic convention, they will switch Michelle Biden with a different candidate.
Very
And I laughed,
interesting.
and I said no. And he's a well-known member of the community. I thought, man, you had one too many years. And here we are. And every morning I get like little messages like, I told you.
I've thought
Yes,
that for a long.
It could be.
And to deal with the Kamala Harris thing, I think that there's a plan in place for that, and I think it includes Michelle Obama,
Right.
which is an easy transition. I think
You can explain it that way.
I think you're looking at Michelle Obama and Gavin Newsom ticket.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I also have to agree with him. I mean, I called that when this person, he'd never serve out the term. He would not finish it. And it would be towards the end. And
There's a
so we might,
precedent for this with Nixon,
there,
right? So
well, there's certainly a precedent, but I think the plan is, anyway.
it's been in place.
It'll be interesting, and we'll probably know something very soon. Julie, how about you?
I'm having an interesting time listening. Well, when you sent us that information on a text, I got the text and I had some of the questions, and I thought, okay, personally or politically, you know, when I looked at that one personally, I would, if I was his family and I could see the diminishing mental state, you know, why wouldn't you just say personally to him, it's time.
It's time to exit stage
We
left.
would have to take the car keys from Dad.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
His wife is seeking power.
I
He was-
know.
And you can't
I
get
know.
prosecuted because you're not competent.
Right.
And then,
Yeah.
politically,
That was like
I'm
the
kind
most-
of on this
What?
same page of maybe he should stay in.
Maybe it's the, yeah,
Yeah,
right.
you know, political strategy, stay in, you know what could happen, you know what probably would happen.
Exactly.
But, I thought differently on if they replaced him. It had to be somebody with name recognition, don't you think?
Yeah.
Somebody with some name recognition, and would that be Kamala Harris? I don't know. Who would it be?
Newsom?
Newsom,
Yeah.
certainly.
He's the only one who has the name, who's slick.
And
He's very slick, a great debater, he's got $1 million smile.
But what do
Yeah.
you think about
Yeah.
Michelle? I mean, I
Well,
mean,
her
Michael,
too,
I mean,
but I
Michelle,
Obama.
I don't think Michelle Obama wants to be president.
I don't
think
she
If
does,
she
you
would
know.
ran,
Well,
she knew she would
remember,
be.
remember what you said before, when you said somebody that seeks power or that doesn't seek power, and I think the American people are looking for that. Which is why, if you watch Gavin Newsom's presentations the last 6 months, he's setting the stage for that.
Yeah.
And I think Michelle Obama has been setting the stage for that since day one.
That
So-
could be very interesting.
Have you ever seen Gavin Newsom respond to a question he does not like from a reporter?
Yeah.
I think that right there would keep him from winning. He does
I
not
think
deal
what he's
well
done
with
to
questions.
California-
Conflict.
Yes.
I think he has a little bit of self-perception that's not accurate.
Yes.
The people of California are not happy with him.
Yeah.
They're leaving
Living
California
yourself.
rapidly,
Yeah.
that's important. Bill, how about you?
I think we went off on a tangent here.
Like four, Bill.
You asked a question, one question to Biden, and all of a sudden she dumps a ton of bricks.
I'm glad they're blaming you. I'm glad they're blaming you.
Yeah, I didn't want to go in that direction. What I want to talk about is illegals in the border.
But that wasn't the question.
No, I know, but that
Oh,
came
you
up.
said that? Okay,
That
okay.
came up.
That
That's-
came up in your conversation.
That's the
Yeah, that was the
that's one thing
problem.
that's gonna destroy this country. There is no fish alive without scales. Okay, there is no country in the world like the United States allowing illegals to cross. Mexico does not allow illegals to cross. African countries. When I immigrated here in 1979, we had to be in 2 countries before the United States to get vetted. FBI did the vetting in Austria and in Italy for weeks and for months. They made sure we were good to go. The Remain in Mexico policy that Biden canceled on the first day in power was the indication of what the Democrat Party and what the liberals, again, who's pulling the strings behind Biden? Who's behind that curtain? That was a clear indication of what was coming. And there was nothing wrong with Remain in Mexico policy to vet these people. And you can't even vet them. I mean, there's no way you can vet people. We obviously see the crime, we see the murders, we see the rapes, we see kids, we see, you name it, it's there. And we have some local politicians here who would like to have illegals working on their farms or businesses because it's good for their farms and businesses. Because according to these local politicians, white guys don't want to do those jobs. I said in those meetings, I came with questions when those politicians did not show up, or they did not want to answer those questions. You have to say at some point, yeah, it's benefiting my business, but this is my country. This is the well-being of my country. There are work visas. You can arrange for farm workers to come in and pick apples. So you can't conflate immigration, which this country was built on, because I'm one of those people, and the illegals who are breaking the law. Simple, they're breaking the law coming in here, period.
And that has to be frustrating to you as someone who did it the right way.
It's frustrating to the Mexicans who are here legally. I mean, I'm a white privileged guy, right? So what do I know? Nobody knows history, why my family came here, how we came here with a debt to repay without a dime to our name. But it doesn't matter. The Mexicans who've been here for 20, 30 years have a problem with illegals coming in.
Right. Because they're probably stereotyped quite frequently.
And there's a good possibility that Trump may get the Hispanic vote this election. Very good possibility. It is teetering right now, which is unprecedented.
Yeah, that's history in the making.
Absolutely.
Right there, for
You
sure.
look at the secondary effects of that too, like the moral destruction that's happening, from the fentanyl infrastructure. And people are making the connection of that, but so we were down in Mexico and talking to some people that were explaining to me how this works, and all these people are coming in. The problem to get there is they don't have the money to get there in order to get across. So even though it's easy to walk across, you still have to have somebody that is paying their way in or paying their way across, and these people don't have the money to do it. The cartels, which have grown massively in power through this process, are charging $10,000 to $12,000 per person, and how do you pay that back?
And by the way, they have to carry across those illegal drugs.
Yes,
Yeah.
so they give them the drugs, and they say when you come to the U.S., here is $12,000 of fentanyl, which by the way is not that big. So you sell that money, you sell those drugs, you bring back the money, we'll release one of your family members to come back, and we'll give them $12,000. And slowly over this process, you will pay off all your stuff. And this is why we have people in tents across from schools offering free trials fentanyl as a sales pitch to try to sell these things. And these people come across, they go meet the guy at the gate. So it's not just, when you look at this, it's like oil and water, right? If you put more oil in, eventually you have more oil than you'll have water. And when you add other chemicals to that, you end up with a completely different solution than what you originally did before. So we're going to eventually end up, let me just finish this, so you're going to end up with not only destruction of our democratic system, because the people coming in have a different perception and different intentions with their democratic process. They don't come here for that, they want the free stuff. So they come here, they reduce the number of people in that mindset that are pushing for our patriotism and for our country's foundational principles. And behind that, you have a moral and criminal and judicial degradation of everything behind it. Because they're bringing with them drugs, crimes, and it's destroying communities.
Yes.
Faster than our patriotism.
I think as bad or worse than that though, as we all know, you can only sell fentanyl once. But we talked about slaves, and it seems such, we need reprobation, all that. No, we have more slavery in the world today than ever before, and we right now, the United States is selling slavery. Our administration is selling slavery, and you can't back away from that. The sex slave that's happening with the children that's coming across in particular is terrible. It's shameful, and people are calling it out left and right, and yet we just turn our backs, and it continues. The moral decay of this country by being complicit is affecting all of us. It's unfortunately, it's not just centered on border states. It's not just centered in the big cities. This is affecting all of us, and we need to right this ship. And whether anyone else agrees, I'll say it here because I agree, we need to turn back to our foundational principles, which means we need to turn back to the Lord.
Well, human trafficking is a huge problem. Senator.
Yes, I was just going to talk to Bill's point about I heard those discussions too, and we farm in Bingham County. Our workers we've used the H2A program and gone to the expenses that it takes to be able to do that. And so it was frustrating for me to hear those conversations, because we do have workers that come, migrant workers that come every year from Mexico, and work on our farms. But we are we are working with the pieces that are in place and the laws that are in place to make sure that they are legal. This morning, we had one of them get his finger cut off on a piece of irrigation equipment. My husband's at the hospital this afternoon. This gentleman's in surgery, and we are gonna pay the bill for this. And so there are some of us.
That's an honorable way of doing it, and that's the right way of doing it. But like Travis said, when I sat for my citizenship exam, and I was asked the questions about America, including New York Yankees, I mean, you're sitting with an immigration officer. I said, I will learn English, and I will take up the culture of the United States to become an American citizen. I never asked the government for a dime of subsistence or help or assistance. It was all done through private organizations in 1979. But what you see now is people coming to milk the system.
Right.
And at the time, we didn't have that crime and fentanyl subset, which today exists. But it's absolutely atrocious what's happening on the border. And if anybody does not vote for citizenship bill to vote in the federal election, you're agreeing that illegals should not vote. There are municipalities today, not in the federal elections, New York City, California, that are allowing illegals to vote in local elections and state elections. That should be against the law. It's not just the federal. It should be every state governor, every state secretary of state. Somebody obviously is okay with that. And
Well,
that's
we
not
have
okay.
it across the country, right? So they come in there, they come into California, for example, and the state of California provides them funding. 3 hotels, like
Sure.
New York City, for example.
Yeah.
I won't even get into that because we work a lot with New York City, but I will tell you the amount of money that they're spending on housing these. They've even taken hotels and they just said,
Roosevelt
they're-
Hotel on
Roosevelt Hotel,
Lexington
one of my
Avenue.
favorite hotels. They just said, you know what, you guys make $300 a night, we'll give you $500. The whole hotel is just turned into a migrant. And so if you're the owner of the hotel, again, back to that, you'd like to think they go, this is a bad gig, but somebody needs to house these people, and most of them are taught to bleeding hearts. So I'm also gonna make millions of dollars, I have to do less, and these people come in and they're fed food, they're giving subsidies for food, and they're living in the Roosevelt friggin' Hotel, which is a beautiful hotel in downtown New York City. Used to be, right? And so they come in and they drain that system, and you create this mindset around you that's contagious. The other people around are like, look, you know, American citizens that went through that process that may not be doing so well financially are going, how's this work, right? And so when you see that, then you see the city, the leaders in that community constantly getting voted in despite the economic disparity. Because the people that are coming in, state of California being one of the best, bring these people in, allow them to vote in the elections, I regain my position, and all I gotta do is keep paying for their votes. And we're turning into more of these states, learning that Newsom's leadership methodology is bring them in, give them what they want, my vote number increases, I'm gonna stay in power.
Yeah, again, it goes back to the love of power for sure. Kirk.
Yeah. One of the things I kind of want to get back to when we were talking about the crime, I was watching the debate with my 18-year-old daughter, and she was quite astounded. She didn't realize how far down that road President Biden was. She was shocked, and like to your point, I'm like, yeah, this isn't a surprise to me. You know, I've listened to him talk, but to get back to that, one of the things that disturbed me the most in the debate was when Donald Trump brought up the point of women being raped and sex trafficked by illegal immigrants, and Joe Biden made some point of like, well, they're also being raped by their in-laws and blah, and my immediate thought was, okay, but does that make it okay to add more rapes?
They're already being raped,
it's like, just because something is already happening doesn't mean you ignore the acceleration of that crime. DUI is a big problem, but it doesn't mean that, oh, people are already doing it. you know, you still don't want more drunks on the road.
We'll do drive-through liquor, it's fine.
Yeah, let's make it easier for them to get the liquor.
Yeah.
And then, so that was really what disturbs me is, also heard one of the illegal immigrants coming across the border interviewed, this has been quite some time ago, and was asked directly about raping women, and these guys were just talking about it like it was just a fact of life for them. That's what they do. And the one guy asked me, well, don't you worry about getting caught or something? Because yeah, sometimes they scream, and you have to be careful not to get diseases. And I about had to run off the road.
I just have to push back on that. I mean, come on. These people that are illegal immigrants, they're not following the law, but I don't think they're coming here to sexually molest. They're trying to flee something that's really bad. And to label all these illegal immigrants as rapists is pretty...
No, absolutely not. I'm not gonna let you get away with that. I did not say all, just like Donald Trump never said all. I said a few, a very, very small few, but that is still more than it was yesterday.
3% of 14 is a lot of rapists.
I would never, ever in a million years say that all immigrants are criminals. I do not believe that, and I would never say that.
And in truth, immigration, especially illegal immigrants, are the lowest people to try to commit crime because they're here. They don't want to get attention. They don't want to get caught, right? Immigrants are less. They commit less. So American citizens, right? Because there's so many of us. Like, of course, as a percentage of crime, they're the most that commit crime. Legal immigration, they are the second group, and then illegal immigrants. If you go look at the statistics, it's very clear. They're the lowest ones that want to do it. Now there are bad actors. There's certainly the people trading drugs that have to have their guns and they get caught in some bad
But
situations.
John, how do we know illegal are the ones who commit the least crime? Because the mere fact that we
Because
don't-
everyone has to go through the
Because-
criminal system, and we can.
So the point is, we only know of those who we've been able to catch.
Right, but
And
that's the
so-
definition of crime. Like,
Well,
there's crimes happening, of course, that don't get solved. But
Exactly, and there's, as we have seen, crime has exponentially increased with in-house.
crime has been declining for the
No,
last
no.
decade.
No.
Crime
It's
has
because it's not being
crime
reported.
has
Don't
not
prosecute.
been
No,
reported.
I
No,
have.
John,
Where you
we are. And then listen to the people who are living in these cities, and they're fed up.
I'm curious where you're seeing data that isn't, because if you look at every
Register
straight
last week just said that the crime was reduced,
So they talked about around
what
here,
area
but not,
around here?
but also its
Sure, I'm
increase
like-
in Idaho Falls.
certain crimes, so
Yeah,
but
but-
overall, and if you look at the FBI crime statistics, we have been decreasing for a decade.
So if you pull up New York City,
They're
no.
not reporting.
Chicago, no. California, no. All the
Murders have been they have been just falling off a cliff, because no one's actually interacting, there's hardly any,
I've looked at it, I'll
John, you know, just
two
two weeks ago in Chicago, that they had 100 murders over the weekend. Basically black on black crime, which is the largest number they'd had.
It was the most violent month in the
Most
history.
violent month in the history. But that's all we're gonna hear about it. You know.
But
I'm
look
not-
at
I'm
how
not-
much
I'm not
crime is
reconcile
not
that,
being
'cause I'm-
prosecuted.
when
That
I-
brings the numbers down.
When you pull up the city statistics, and you looked at the major tier 1 cities, that's not the case. They're almost all increasing in violent crime.
well, yeah, and.
Some petty crimes in different categories in different neighborhoods are.
Right,
getting
and it
more.
depends on how you define crime, and violent crime in Idaho Falls has risen some. Like,
So we're talking mostly about
We
violent
have-
crime,
We
which
have more
includes.
murders. I'm freaking getting scared. People are getting shot in shootings all the time now.
Now, if
I've
you're
never
taking-
heard of this before growing up. I'm born and raised here.
If you're taking collective crime, then I can't look at those numbers, but if you're talking violent crime, which is what we're concerned about, these are rapes, these are murders, armed robberies, pretty much anything that involves a weapon or sexual assault. In pretty much every area in the US, they are up.
We'll look at it.
And in massive scale, like New York City is, now New York City, for example, when they send out paramedics, have to send 2 police officers with them.
The 1990s was the highest murder rate in New York City.
No, not now.
Yeah.
Trust me, I got guys. in New
Maybe
York City.
percentage of population, but not the numbers.
But maybe by percentage, but the actual crime rate, I can show you, I get videos of them. I
Oh.
can show you paramedics going out to save people and
Plenty.
getting stabbed while they're in the process of getting CPR.
Yeah, there's plenty of nasty things that happen
And up until the last few years, I had never heard of these bizarre crimes
They are bizarre.
of being thrown into the oncoming, not train or, you know, whatever, subway system and, you know, just people walking along with an 87-year-old woman and just smacking, pounding her family, just bizarre crimes. I mean, it's, and then you get the videos of people in California and they're in zombie land, you know, on their drugs. I mean, we are in an unprecedented place. And I lived in California for 10 years when I was coaching. The beautiful places in California where I went and recruited and lived, no longer. I mean, filled with tent cities and crime and
Downtown Denver.
Yeah.
Portland, Oregon.
Yes.
Portland is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
hard.
but
It's
even,
hard.
even in Idaho Falls, there's a number of cops who work out at the Apple Gym. I don't know if you ever see them.
I do.
We have conversations all the time. They're incredibly aware of the little crime. I'm not talking about the violent stuff because they don't talk about it. The little stuff, the theft, porch theft, bicycle theft. They said, we've never seen anything like this by the numbers.
Which I think boils down to, as she said, the morality of our county is being destroyed. And, you know, when you have family members that weren't involved in drugs, or you have homeless people living around you, slowly there's a decay of the morality of your community, and it starts to, you know, I got young kids, and you know, we raise our kids. We're not super religious, but we raise our kids in strong morals. But even as you watch them as they grow up through that age, and there's the online presence, which is its own battle, but you know, the things that happen around them that they hear about slowly affect their perception of the world. At that young age, you know, we were taught you don't steal, you don't lie, you don't cheat, and we teach our kids the same, but everybody around me lies, cheats, steals, and so, you know, this
Not
is,
everybody does.
no, and you know, when we grew up, it was, my friends all knew, these are things you don't do, and these are the lines, right?
Right.
But your kids, you're constantly having conversations with them around, yeah, I know that 4 people you know do this, and they, you know, live the gray area, and this, and you see it as, more so as a parent, I think, than in our normal everyday lives. As a parent, because you're cognizant of that, and I watch my kids come home and talk about things that were just black and white for us at our age, and now they're gray, red, and purple.
Yeah.
Right. We're seeing a lot more violence in schools across the country at younger and younger ages, just really aggressive, impulsive.
Breakdown of the family, the failure of the family's involvement in the kids raising, let the school do it.
Yeah, taking the parents' involvement.
Responsibilities.
Not enforcing laws.
That's
Did you
just the part, that's
Did you
just
just
the
see
part
the
I
thing
was
of
gonna
a
say.
Target, I
Yeah.
can't remember what town,
Yeah.
where they got threatened with a fine because they were calling the police too often for theft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the prosecutor
San Francisco.
threatened
Yeah.
the Target store with a massive fine.
When you
calling.
don't hold accountable those who would do harm, then our laws mean nothing. We are no longer a nation of laws, and we come it becomes very subjected as to that which we want to enforce, if they're really and then it was funny. You know, California just is in the middle of a huge debate on how they would treat sex offenders for those who would perpetrate sexual harms to children. And how they rose up against it. Well, this isn't right because, well, it puts more of our minorities and LGBT community at risk. What? We're talking about the risk to children, and you're gonna bring up this false narrative and go off on a tangent because of what, minorities and LGBT? I mean,
Well, because as you said
we are
before, right,
messed up.
we can't
So the thing that you sent
say
about
what
the
needs to be
cell
said
phone,
against groups.
Yes.
kind of goes back to
I'd
what
say
he's
it's about,
talking about
kids.
morals and values and
Not having cell phones in the schools.
in the schools, but, so I was running these questions by some people that I know yesterday, and they said, we're all on our cell phones all the time. You know, how many dinner conversations happen
Right.
when people are not on their cell phones, you know? You go to restaurants, and you see a whole family sitting there waiting for their food, and everybody's on their cell phone.
Yeah, they're alone together, right?
Yes,
Yes.
you know, so you talk about losing the family, that's where, I think this is where some of it's coming from.
I 100% agree. I just, as you see that and the you know, social interaction, the two of them combined is accelerating. This was already like I said, kids, it's a constant fight.
Well, there's good and bad, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but
But when you
the
add
bads-
to that, where they're seeing stuff happening in their community and this kind of moral decline that matches what they're seeing online, it speeds it up. And I think during COVID, and maybe because of the age of my kids, I saw and I've seen during this administration's time, which includes COVID, which includes, you know, the not blind study, because my kids are in the age group that's most sensitive, but definitely a massive acceleration, I think, that we've seen in this country for the last 4 years of that moral decline.
Well, you know, kids are having to bear adult-sized problems on their shoulders.
Sure.
Things that were not meant for tiny shoulders. And I think so often we forget that kids' brains are not fully developed, not even at 18. So you've got kids with, you know, underdeveloped brains being exposed to a lot of things, and it's really hard for parents to have a control over that, because if they say you're not gonna have a phone, guess what? They see it at school with their friends who do have phones, so it does become challenging.
And you know, some of that decay, I think, has come from, so I'm listening to, and I've seen the movie Dope Sick, and it's about the opioid crisis with OxyContin. And as they're talking, there's I think a lot of our mental health issues come from that, and that kind of a crisis that comes along, and then you have the fentanyl, but in between you've got COVID, and so all of these together, to me, lead to a lot of what's going on in society. And the mental health issues, you sent an issue about the shooting up in Yellowstone Park.
Right.
And the gentleman, the guy that did that, and he wanted to do a mass shooting up there.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of that has to do with a lot of these drug crises that have came along, because when you look at the age group of the people that are in that addiction place, it's not just young people or old people. I mean, it's across the board.
Right.
And so and that has to have some effect on what's going on in our families, in our society, when you've got a number of parents that are missing in action, basically.
Yeah.
Because
You do.
mentally they're not there. So how can you raise kids that are mentally healthy when you've got adults that are not mentally healthy?
Right.
So I think we've had a few things hit in the last, I don't know, how many years that have contributed to this. And I think it's all coming together now.
I think it comes down to one thing too, you know, as a kid, you know, we raise our kids a little different than I was raised, for sure. Very open, but very clear with my kids. It's like, this is what's happening, this is what's wrong, this is what's right. And, well, and you see in our community, it's very difficult to do that in a cultural society where you go, you might be mentally unstable, right? That's a tough place as anybody in the community to tell somebody that, right? So you're just like, now it's transformed into, oh, they're just different. And now it's conformed into difference is acceptable. And now it's transformed into difference is beautiful. And now difference is standardized. And so, you know, I think it comes back, and I'm unfortunately very good at this. Not the reason so many people like me, because I don't play that game. But as a community, that's one of my biggest frustrations, or as a culture, you know, I think we need to have leaders that say, this is not acceptable. This is not normal behavior. This is not healthy behavior. This is where we draw the line. And we used to do that. I mean, you know, if you were caught in a girl's bathroom,
Yep.
you used to go to jail.
But you're afraid of offending somebody.
Correct.
Therefore you don't say it.
Exactly.
And that's where you go to, that's what, you know, I think that's where a lot of people, when it comes to Trump, love or hate. And I think that's a big differentiator between him, is because those of us that have seen the destruction of what that PC has done in our community, it's one of the freshest things we like about Trump, is because he doesn't play that game.
There are truths. We've always had truths throughout the history of time. Those truths are being bent, changed, challenged.
You mean it's not your truth or my truth?
Exactly, exactly. And so just on a side note, bringing it back real quickly, also Georgia Barna is a major pollster and he does a lot of things religiously. And one thing over the last couple of years that he said as he's polled throughout the nation, he said that we're at a point that only 6% of Americans have a biblical worldview. And now, do I think he's right? I hope he's not. I hope he's not. But if only 6% of Americans have a biblical worldview, we then just that alone systematically change the foundational principles on which this country was built.
Well, also, I'll tell you what I see in the political science, like academia that's coming back to me, the students that write to me. For years, I heard the voices of their parents. Now I hear the voices of TikTok, Facebook. Because
Wow.
just realize who's
Just
influencing your
scary.
kids. It's not your family.
Nope.
Because you're getting 3 or 4 hours a week or 10 hours a week with your kid. If you drive them to places, you might get some more hours. But that phone, have you seen your kid's screen time? It's 8 to 10 hours a day.
You know what's funny about that, and I find this like going back to this manipulation, which I don't think is intentional, like destruction mindset, but I think it's a monetization mindset. You know, if you've seen The Social Dilemma, for example, my kids have screen time on all their devices.
Then they should use limited, is what you're
Yep,
saying. Yeah.
but they get 2 hours across everything like per day, so that's the whole day long. And yet I'll come home and I'm like, you've been on that for 2 hours at least, I know. When I pull it up and their screen time says 2 hours, it doesn't actually limit them. So I think there are a lot of parents out there, you know, you're at work. I work all the time. When I'm home, I'm distracted or on phone calls or whatever else. And at the end of the night, I'll come back and realize my son who's supposed to be on the game no more than 2 hours a day has been on his tablet, his phone, his Xbox, and the screen times say they all sync and so forth. But I tell them all the time, I don't think that is actually being controlled by the settings. And I think it's 100% that way. I think it's meant to be, call it maybe a conspiracy theory. But if I'm at Facebook, I go, I want the parents to think.
But how many conspiracy theories end up being true?
Jonathan,
More and more lately.
Yes, that's the, yeah.
If I was in the monetization game, I'd say, yeah, tell their parents are on for 2 hours a day. And let them play with their
Julie
I
and
love
I
the
are
meme that
probably-
says I need to find new conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
It's all my old ones come true.
That's right.
Jonathan
Yeah,
Haidt
yeah.
has written about the anxious generation that just came out about a month ago. And his argument is you need to get rid of them across the board at a certain age range, or else the equity theory that people really struggle with, if my friend has it, then why can't I have it?
Yeah.
But if it's going across the board in the schools, they're seeing scores come right back up. And, but it has to be collective, or else everyone feels like they're losing out.
If you want to help fight that, Barb, we started a bill that no schools allowed. I was actually shocked. My kids moved to their high schools, and she texted me on the day. I was like, "Are you homesick? What are you doing?" She goes, "No, I'm sitting in class. I need something." I was like, "Put your phone down. What are you doing texting me?"
And it's hard for teachers to keep control.
Well, they can't really.
Right.
The teachers can't.
Difficult for the
Yeah.
teachers.
Didn't some
Although-
school district in California just passed it?
Yeah, but I've
So
also been, for
before-
example, I've been in
Right.
Jillian Araki's classroom. She's the math teacher at Skyline. She's the IFEA president, and I've been in there, with her to observe. And they come in, they have a place, they all put their phones, and I'm like, wow, those could
That's
be
a
those
smart idea.
calculators
Yeah.
too. But I'm just saying, they don't even question her.
I know that
Just put it in.
some of the school districts and some of the individual leadership of the school have different takes on that. Like,
Yeah.
they think it's more of a fight than it's worth, and so they just don't do it. I think if they had support at a higher level that required that, and they were, let's be honest, at that level they should be enforcing, not writing policy.
It would be awesome if the parents came to the school and said, could you help us? We want to help you too. You know.
Have
And
you
they
seen,
just,
have you seen the kids' reaction when you try to take them away?
Oh,
It's-
yeah.
it's like-
You
it's-
can see there's a real
existential.
addiction.
Call them vampires.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, that would be another interesting conversation,
Yeah.
if we get to it for another day, because there's also a flip side to all of that, and I'll just throw this out there as we close. And I'm not saying which way I support, but what's been interesting is because of our phones that the kids have had in schools, a heck of a lot has been revealed as far as what the kids have been being taught.
Yeah.
the sexualization of the kids,
COVID.
the
During
COVID, where they've been bullied in there. So the kids have caught a lot of things at school on camera with that phone, just as an FYI.
Yeah,
Now, there's always two sides
I
to
know, I know.
every story.
there's other ways to deal with that too.
Right.
Yeah, but I agree.
I'm just
Yeah, I
saying
agree.
that would be part of an interesting conversation another day if everybody wants to come back.
Yeah, definitely, we'll do
I
that.
think we might all be on more exact same page on that one.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, you bring up a really great point, John, and it's something I see a lot. Once upon a time, we looked for rock-solid role models, and that's why I think it's so important that our thought leaders step forward, because young people today, their role models are their peers, people who have been around the block the same amount of time as they have. They're looking to influencers and YouTubers, and you know, they're not gonna get that sound life advice. And the other part of that I will throw out is if you watch some of those teen TV shows, some of those children's TV shows, Nickelodeon, any of them, Disney, it has become funny to make fun of parents. You know, oh, boomer,
That
you
is
don't
true.
know
That
anything.
is true.
And so we are actually teaching them that, you know what, you get to disrespect people who are older and wiser because of life experience. And I like to say this, I don't care how well you know technology, you don't get to skip to the front of the line because life experience is something you have to earn. So no amount of technology is going to replace life experience. And I think we have to get back to elevating that point and getting our young people to really look to real role models instead of these imaginary role models. It has been such a great conversation today. It's gone way too fast. So what I want to do, because I know there are things we didn't get to, so I'm going to give each of you a chance to just throw out something that you wanted to say that we didn't have time to get to, and then we'll do this drawing right after. So Bill, if you've got something.
How much time do you have?
Yeah, well, we're gonna have to get you back.
No, I mean, I didn't want to get into the Trump person name situation. I think 4 years of his policies clearly indicative of him as a person. And if people say he's a threat to democracy, he's this, he's that, he didn't threaten the democracy for 4 years. We had no wars, no American military died, we had peace in the Middle East, Putin didn't jump into Ukraine, Iran didn't jump into Israel, we had relatively secure border in relation to the last 10, 15 years. There was respect in the NATO for the United States because he made NATO pay up to 2% at the greatest rate and level ever in history. He never wanted to get out of NATO. That became the big news on CNN. Trump was pulling the United States out of NATO. He should have gotten out of the World Health Association or WHO organization, and that entire boondoggle of the United Nations is the terrorist propagandist organization. I faced them face to face in Ukraine when I was there 4 times. We dealt with UNRWA every day. They now confirm 150 UNRWA members were part of the terrorist cells that infiltrated and were part of the attack in Israel on October 7th. United Nations was a cancer, is a cancer. And Trump had the balls. We're gonna get fined.
Yeah,
The radio station is gonna get fined, but
We're talking about
FCC,
basketball.
yeah. To say those things, I'm gonna vote for him every day, you know, as long as he runs. Absolutely.
Thanks, Bill. And Senator?
Thank you. Thanks for having us. I enjoyed this. This was a great conversation. Especially liked what Barb had to say about her tour and who you were working with, the number of people that you were working with on this. It seems like it's across the board. Democrats, Republicans, everybody is on board with the Title IX issues that are going on right now. The summer before you ran the bill at the Idaho legislature, I watched the NCAA track meet, and it was astounding to me. The men that we're running in the women's sports.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was wrong, so I was so glad when you brought that. But to me, that just goes to prove that there are issues out there, and this is what we should be working together on all the time, is issues that really affect our citizens and working together to get solutions to that. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that conversation and those comments. And I appreciate all of this because that's what's going on in our lives right now. All of these conversations I've heard at some time or another.
Right.
With friends, family, just acquaintances. So it's good for me to hear this. And no, it's normal.
Thank you, Senator Travis.
I'm just never short of anything to say, unfortunately. But, I think you made an important context. I think, I found the same thing. I won't say everybody, because I think there are bad people in our world. I've lived, enough places and spaces to find there are bad people. But the majority, I think there are people that in our country, we all want 97% of the same thing. And I think we have through, the 250 plus years of our government and the different generations lost track a little bit of what the Constitution was originally founded because of. And so this 4th of July, I actually had someone send me the reading of the actual Declaration of Independence in its entirety, which I hadn't done. I'd done it one time when I was in DC, but I don't think it resonated with me as much because it was 15 years ago and there wasn't as much turmoil going on. And so I read it, and I found it very enlightening, because all this other fluff about abortion and this and that and all this stuff, when you take all that crap out and you actually look at what we're trying to do as a country and the freedoms, and by the way, my freedom shall not infringe on your freedom, that kind of mindset that comes from the tyranny that was happening at the time in which this country was founded. And some of the examples, by the way, if you haven't read the Declaration of Independence, he specifically speak to the exact types of tyranny that were ruling them, right? And this was persecution for enactment of their freedoms that they should have. This was for basically, pursuing their own beliefs and being persecuted for them, and for own power and benefit. And as I was reading this or listening to it, I was blown away, because some of the signs in where our country is headed are in the early phases of some of these things, and many other things are completely unimportant. And so as I was reading that through, I thought this might be a good place as a country for us to maybe get back to starting to realize, like, between one party and the next, like, forget all the fluff. Does this person, or do these people in our local elections, in our local community, the leaders we're electing, resonate with that core foundation? Because if they can't do that, and they won't vote for bills that are focused around creating that type of security for our people and that freedom and that liberty, we got a real problem. So maybe bring you back to simplicity, but anyway, just something as people listening to it, if you haven't listened to the entire Declaration of Independence, I would tell you, listen to it, read it from start to finish. There's a lot of wisdom in that I think, especially in today's world, is easy to apply than other times.
Thank you, Travis. And Representative?
Well, kind of how I started, that I love this country. I have always loved this country. I grew up as a strange child, being very well aware, and not because of my parents, not any at all, just me, being very well aware of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, trying to study what our founders conserve what we had. That's why I call myself a conservative. I will do whatever I can to fight for our original Constitution, Declaration of Independence. And let me just say this, and maybe others will do it when I run, and you all can ask me, you can challenge me, and I'll do my best to answer. I'm not going to tell you the things that are obvious. Of course, a lot of people run and say, we want safe police, and we want good roads and infrastructure. So do we. That's like the duh stuff. When people run on the duh stuff, you need to question what they're running on, because that's fluff that gets in the way of really getting down to where their beliefs are. I'll tell you what mine are. and I will continue to fight for traditional family values. I want people to have the kind of I grew up here in Idaho Falls. I had a wonderful upbringing. I was so blessed to grow up here. I was so blessed to grow up in a family and in a community and to be part of a church. It didn't have to be my church. I was so blessed to grow up, although, happy it was, but to grow up in a community that valued religion. And that's what I would like to see. And that's when I run. Those are principles on which I'm running. And I guess at some point, someone's not going to like it, and they will vote me out, and then I'll run against John. I'm so kidding. John, I'll never run against John. John's fine. Then I'll just settle down and do whatever I can in the community to continue to help others.
Thank you so much, Barb. John?
So these conversations are always positive, and being a Democrat in Idaho, this is the conversation.
Yeah.
For me. But I will say that one of the things I really try to tell my students is we the people. Like, it's not, the government isn't some mystical them. When you've done what we've done and sat through tens of thousands of hours and talked about last night the sewer lines of the city of Idaho Falls, and how we could be 1,000 miles of sewer lines if we stacked them end to end. Like, we are the government. Like, there isn't some mystical them. We need to get involved. We need to vote. We need to be informed. We need to go to the meetings. We need to act at the meetings. We need to run for office. And we need to do the things that we think are going to be better for our community. And I will stand up for one thing in DEI, because I'm the DE, I'm not that worried about, but inclusion, because I get really tired, especially in this town, of people belittling people from California or Utah or Idaho that have moved from other areas. Where in the hell do you think you came from? Like, you're not Native American, so some point, someone came here and built a life, and someone accepted your parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents. And I went to a training recently at DEI, and I was like, I'm this Idaho redheaded white guy, like, this is gonna be boring. And it was this great speaker who got up and said, hey, this is just like the lunch room in junior high. How did it feel when all the popular kids said, you can't sit there, get the hell out of here? Like, inclusion, I can get on board with being kind and being, trying to find common ground. Now, when they start threatening rights of other people, or if they start breaking the law, then we have a problem. Right?
Kind of
Yeah. And so, I just hope that we can all walk away from these kind of conversations knowing that everyone has good intent. Everyone wants to be part of the solution. And then let's go back to the data. And the other thing I'll say, and Barb knows this about me, let's pass some regulations and law and then iterate. Let's not just pass law and think, we're all good and it worked.
Right.
I would love 20 years ago someone to pass something in healthcare, and then hell, the Democrats screwed it up, and the Republicans, let's try their plan, and then let's try the Dem if they screwed it up. But that is not how we work in government. We have to be perfect because we're going to get criticized. Let's act and then iterate instead of trying to be perfect at the outset, because you're not going to be, right? And so I just think we all need to be involved. We need to be citizens and be informed. And the other level is exactly what you said. We've got to go be discriminating against where we get our information. And we do as much training on that in political science classes now as we have, that's almost more of it than it ever has been, because it's so easy with AI and with all the reporting, but anything, and now with all the speeches, don't trust any video of someone's voice. Who knows? So.
All right, and Kirk?
One thing I did want to bring up is something that bothers me on a daily basis is the absolute polarization. As I said at the beginning, most of my friends are pretty radical left-wingers, and I always make a point of telling my friends, we may disagree on issues, but it doesn't mean I don't like you. We all are trying to get to the same place. We want security, a healthy family, make a living, safe country. We all want these things and more, but we have got to get to a point where we don't have to hate people we disagree with. We need to have discussions like this. And I really, really think that is, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems we have in this country right now, because we've got it now to where you can't just turn on the news. You have to surf 3 different channels to get every point of view or more. And we have so many people that do that. I know people very closely that get all their news from TikTok. Well, if you're getting your news from the same people on TikTok every single day that you follow every day, or if it's Fox News, or if it's CNN or MSNBC, you are going to become more and more and more polarized. The things that people believe about Democrats and Republicans and Donald Trump is so outrageous, and some of these people believe this to their core, some of these crazy things, because that's all they've been drilled into their heads. And one last thing, if you, on a personal level, if you don't like Donald Trump, you don't like Joe Biden, like I always tell people, I don't have to like my CEO. I don't have to like my boss. My checks are coming in. We have a very healthy Chamber of Commerce. I do happen to like our CEO, but I don't need to. Yeah, but I don't need to. I don't need to like my boss. I don't need to like my president. As long as they're doing their job and keeping me and my family safe and keeping the checks flowing and my job there, I'm happy. And I wish the whole country could just kind of all realize this. All of us come together and realize, okay, we all have a different point of view, but it doesn't mean we have to be enemies.
Right, so true. That's why conversations like this are important. And one of the themes of the Jolyn Thomas Show is compassion and humanity are not partisan issues. I really believe that at my core, and I think we need to be reminded of that sometimes, as a lot of discussions can get very emotional. But history teaches us over and over again, where there is unity, there is strength. So making room for everybody doesn't mean that we have to agree with them. It just means that we elevate humanity and that we are willing to do what we can to remember that at the end of the day, we're all on the same team, and that's how we're going to move forward, is by working for unity. Thanks so much for joining us. Before we go, a great big thank you to Grand Peaks Prime Meats, our wonderful sponsor of Table Talk. Bob and Amy are incredible. Go check them out. They've got grilling packages and ways to make dinner time really convenient and delicious at the same time. So check out gpprimemeats.com. And speaking of that, I have got a gift certificate right here from Grand Peaks Prime Meat, and we are going to let Abby come on up here and draw this out. So you didn't know you were getting put on the spot, right?
I did.
Yeah, I want to have her draw it out. I want to be impartial.
Now partiality is just falling on me, I guess.
Don't do that one, don't do that one.
Oh, Democrat from John Radford.
He was the only one that didn't
Strategy.
I was gonna say, you've gotta make him bend it.
All right, $35 courtesy of our sponsor and our friends Bob and Amy from Grand Peaks Prime Meats. Thanks so much for joining us for this Table Talk, and we'll do it again next month.